Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Awesome Albums with Awesome Andrew. Last time I talked about the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and as tradition goes, I'm going to pick an album by one of the artists who got in and talk about it in today's video. Well, I'm assuming you know who I picked if you're watching this video, so today we're going to talk about the Doobie Brothers and their 1976 album, Takin It to the Streets. I really wanted to talk about Minute by Minute, which is my personal favorite Doobie album, but this album is significant to the Doobie Brothers' history as well as the evolution of music in the mid to late 1970s, and so let's get started. First, I will introduce the band. Tom Johnston on guitar and lead and backing vocals. Patrick Simmons also on guitar and lead and backing vocals. Jeff "Skunk" Baxter, our third guitarist. Tyrone Porter on bass guitar and backing vocals, lead vocals on one song. I will get to that as we progress through the video. John Hartman on drums. Keith Knutson also on drums as well as backing vocals. And our new guy, Michael McDonald, on keyboards, synthesizers, and lead and backing vocals. Our story begins in late 1974. The band was on tour for What Were Once Vices Are Now Habits, and the touring was starting to take its toll. Things got worse during their tour for Stampede, released April 25th, 1975, especially for lead singer Tom Johnston, when he was diagnosed with stomach ulcers. In fact, things got so bad that they even had to cancel some shows. Johnston got to the point where he couldn't even continue on with the band, so the other band members were thinking, well, this is it. We're done. While in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, Skunk Baxter calls up his friend and ex-bandmate Michael McDonald, who was in between gigs for Steely Dan, and was unsure about the future of that band. While the tour itself went over pretty good, a lot of band members were leaving the band. In fact, Baxter himself had left the band a year or so by that point. So Baxter asked him, do you want to join in on the Doobies to help finish up this tour? We need another keyboardist and another singer. So McDonald thought, yeah, sure, I can do that. So he met them at the Le Pavillon Hotel, and then rehearsed for 2 days in a warehouse, and then got on with the tour. McDonald wasn't sure if they really wanted him. He said, they were just looking for someone who can play the Hammond B3 organ and a lot of keyboards, and I was just a songwriter piano hacker, but more than anything, I think they were looking for a singer to fill Tommy's shoes, end quote. The tour, of course, was confusing to a lot of fans who were constantly asking, where's Tommy? So they had to explain, well, he's not here tonight, but he'll be back shortly. McDonald ended up, as he predicted, taking over most of Johnston's duties, and he also learned how hard and long the Doobies tours are, which they were on the tail end of a non-stop 4-year tour by the time McDonald joined the tour. Once it was done, the pressure was on from the record company. Okay guys, it's time for a new album. They held off for as long as they can, waiting for Tommy to come back, but they knew they couldn't wait. Johnston said, I hadn't quit the band, I just wasn't physically able to do it. I needed to get off the road and get away from the whole scene for a while, end quote. That's when they turned to the new guy, McDonald, and that's risky. Whenever you get a new singer, the face of the band, so to speak, can potentially be the end of that band. And McDonald knew that too. He said, I knew the record company was panicked about any changes in the band. They were leery about getting a new guy. I was thrilled to have the gig, but I wasn't expecting all that much, end quote. Producer Ted Templeman encouraged the band to try to make something out of their situation, especially since he was getting hounded by all those record executives for a new album. So he encouraged everyone to go over any songs they had available. Patrick Simmons said, Tommy had cut maybe 5 songs or something. They were just rhythm tracks, some ideas that he had, and we made arrangements to the changes we had. They were really good. We really liked them. And then he took a left turn and said he didn't want to finish the record, and that he was going to stay home and kind of do something different. So we didn't know where we were going to go, end quote. Although Johnston did have one vocal contribution, as well as a duet vocal with Simmons, unfortunately it wasn't enough, so McDonald had to bring in a few of his own demos. Templeman, according to Simmons, said, you've got a real diamond in the rough here that you can make into something if you want to go ahead, end quote. There was some uneasiness, of course, not at McDonald's singing, but they knew that this would drastically change their sound and the band's direction, but the band went through with it. The end result was actually really great for everyone. McDonald recalled a lot of great memories and everyone got along. Even when Johnston was able to come back in '77, there wasn't really any issues with leadership or anything. It wasn't awkward and the band members were open to anything McDonald gave them. There are moments, of course, where you lose yourself, but they always remember they are friends first, and if they don't stay friends, then the rest wouldn't matter. And that statement really stood out to me. I mean, think of some of the rock stories from other albums I've shared in these videos. Pink Floyd and Supertramp are a couple recent videos I've done that come to mind that have forgotten that. Patrick Simmons said, it was really rewarding for all of us. Just great memories all the way through, and great production on Ted Templeman's part. I can't say enough about the guy. He really did so much for the band. Tommy came in and did some stuff on that record too. There's a song of his on there. He did some singing on other songs. It was nice to have that connection and to understand that there were no hard feelings in any way. We were able to get our record done, and he was able to do what he wanted to do and not feel pressured or guilty about it, end quote. Now, even though everyone enjoyed working on the album and really liked the new sound that the band is creating, Templeman didn't want to show the record company execs the material just yet, at least not until a certain point, which is brilliant. I mean, if you pitch the idea, hey, I know we normally go with rock and roll, but we're going to go in a more soul direction with this one, they'd probably look at you and wonder, what? So it's probably wise to wait until you have something to show. I kind of had to laugh at how the Doobies were being marketed with this album as being Michael McDonald's backing band, which they know that wasn't Michael's idea. He's too nice of a guy to have his friends in the back like that. It was just a marketing thing, and I guess it's how the public would start to perceive them too. The album Takin It to the Streets was finally released March 19th, 1976. Now let's take a look at the album cover. It's a pretty simple album cover, a pair of sunglasses with a script writing of the name of the album underneath it on a white background. The pair of green shades, if you look at the gatefold, you'll find is of Patrick Simmons, the exact same photograph of his picture from the gatefold. The gatefold has photos of all 7 band members spread out against a sunset cityscape on the water. The back cover shows the band in a busy street in San Francisco's Chinatown. It makes me wonder if they only had one take for this picture, seeing how Porter and Knudsen aren't even looking at the camera. In fact, it looks like McDonald and Hartman are the only ones taking this photo seriously. Simmons looks like he's having a good time. Baxter looks a little anxious here, and Johnston isn't even pictured. The album credits Dan Fong for the photography and Ed Thrasher for the art direction. Now, unfortunately, not a lot of information exists for the songs themselves, which will make this part of the video fly by pretty quick. But let's go ahead and jump into the music. The opening track sounds a lot like Long Train Runnin' to me, and has a lot more of the older sound of the Doobies, but that's because we have Simmons and Johnston both singing. The single charted at number 87 on the pop singles chart. When they were recording the song, Templeman was really nervous about the changes, especially in percussion. When the band was recording the song, Little Feat drummer Richie Hayward sat in while the band waited for Keith Knudsen to arrive. Simmons recalled, "It was all live, Jeff solo and Mike solo. There's a percussion breakdown with the drums, everyone is playing live, and Tyran did the bass breakdown with the drums, and we kept the track. I think we only played it twice, but I think the first take was what we kept." So it was kind of a first take, live in the studio with Richie sitting in, and Ted was ecstatic because we had a track without beating ourselves up as we sometimes did. So that was the beginning of that record, and it gave us a great deal of confidence, end quote. The band's first single with McDonald on vocals, and the single peaked at number 13 in the US and number 7 in Canada, and was released March 17th, 1976, just 2 days before the album came out. McDonald wasn't sure on how well the song would work out. It was just a gospel-y song that he had in his head, but it was a song at least. But when it came time to play the song, everyone adapted their playstyle to it and became more of a rock gospel arrangement than anything else, and therefore fit the song and the album a lot better. They liked it, it was quirky, but it was new and different, and it was fun for the band. McDonald was hoping that this song would tell people to take it to the streets and spread good word around. Help each other out, basically. To quote the song, "Take this message to my brother, you will find him everywhere. Wherever people live together, tied in poverty's despair." Love that, and it really does make you want to go out and help someone, or at least it does me. Patrick Simmons recalled when they first were introducing McDonald to Templeman, he said, "Ted, I don't know if any of this is of interest at all, but this guy we've got playing keyboards, Mike, he's a really great singer." And Ted's going, "Pat, I think we'd be safer if you did the vocals." You know, the familiarity with your audience. "It might be really chancy to introduce another lead vocalist." I said, "Ted, you've really got to hear this guy sing. He's got a pretty darn good voice." So I said, "Hey Mike, you feel like playing one of your songs for Ted?" He says, "Yeah, sure, I guess so." He sat down at the piano and started playing Takin It to the Streets. I'm looking at Ted and I'm looking at his eyes. His eyes just got wider and wider into big saucers. He looked at me and started mouthing, "Oh my God." He recognized immediately the thing that I had seen. Here's this guy with this incredible voice, and here's a great song on top of it. So that was kind of it. From there, we just kept going and didn't look back, end quote. This song was written and sang by Simmons. It starts off with a lot of brass, courtesy of the Memphis Horns. We have a guest on this track with Novi Novog on viola. The story with this song is Tyran submitted a demo that McDonald did at his house. Templeman liked it and encouraged the rest of the band to record it. McDonald didn't think it would work as the songwriting style is more ballad-based rather than the Doobie style, which is more guitar rock-based, but this song ended up being the first song by McDonald that the rest of the band heard. Baxter gets a co-writing credit along with Simmons on this one. The song starts off with a great drum beat with some jazzy keyboards before going into an almost Caribbean type of sound. I don't know how to describe it, but I like this song as it has a unique mix of the old Doobie sound, but also blending into the new Michael McDonald Doobie sound. This is Porter's vocal contribution to the album. Even before he starts singing, you can definitely tell he wrote it based on how prominent the bass is in the intro, backed with some great keyboard work, of course. I'm going to make a stoner joke here. Oh look, a song that's 420 on a Doobie Brothers record, man. Yeah! As painful as that joke was, the song was huge for the band, acting as their third single on the album, reaching number 37 on the Billboard Pop Singles Hot 100, released on October 5th. The song's popularity is where people start to see the end of Johnston's first era and the beginning of the McDonald era of the Doobie Brothers. Some even say with songs like this that McDonald has basically turned this band into a whole new group, which I guess goes back to the public's perception I mentioned earlier about how a lot of people just started to see in that time that the Doobie Brothers were just Michael McDonald's backing band and that's it. The song is about McDonald trying to talk some woman into listening to what her heart is trying to say. An interpretation I read said that it was about two people sharing a connection that's so strong they can't deny it, but one in the relationship accepts it, and the other doesn't, so they feel they have to keep their distance. Turn It Loose is the B-side to It Keeps You Running and is probably the closest to the old style of the Doobie sound on the album, with Johnston's only other vocal spot is that duet with Simmons on the opening track. But I do find it interesting that this is the B-side to It Keeps You Running. That single then is the perfect example of old sound versus the new sound. I'd love to get a hold of a copy of that single just for that reason. Another song, Heavy on the Brass, sang by McDonald, and a great way to close off the album. I would have liked to learn more about this album, but I literally gave you every piece of information I had. But this album was a pretty big deal to the band. It reached number 8 on the Pop Albums chart in 1976, was also their 4th consecutive top 10 effort, as well as their first to reach platinum for selling over 1 million copies. The success of this album and the drastic change in sound, some believe is what's responsible for the shift in music in the late 1970s. If you look at the earlier 70s, hard-edged, heavy blues were really popular, but then if you look in the late 70s, you have artists like Christopher Cross and Toto getting a fair amount of airplay. Again, this is what one individual said, but I definitely think there's some merit to it when you think about some of the big songs in, say, 71, 72, then listen to something like Sailing, again bringing up Christopher Cross, which was one of the many sounds developing in 78, 79, gearing up for the 80s, so there might be some truth to it maybe. Although it could simply be that McDonald did sing some backing vocals on that particular album, so maybe that has something to do with it. I don't know. This has been Awesome Andrew telling you that the Doobie Brothers, Taking It to the Streets, is an awesome album, and I hope to see you in another episode.